Hey everybody, it's Jason here with Hydrofin. I wanted to walk you through the installation manual, hoping that it might answer some questions for you, or even maybe just prepare you for an installation or if this is something that you're considering. So let's go ahead. I'm going to share my screen. So we've got the installation manual pulled up. This is obviously included if you were to purchase a kit, but basically it's got all of the hardware. One of the most common questions that we get out of this is the glue, and it does come with the glue tips or the mixing nozzles, and then the glue gun itself. It's a two-part epoxy, so it's got to fit specially into this particular glue gun. So that's at a high level what is included from a parts perspective. I'm going to do a completely separate video just specifically talking about the tools that are required. First thing here that I want to make clear is that you don't have to actually lift the boat to find the center of gravity on your boat. We're going to provide the center of gravity for you, or the installation location, the measurements, all of those kinds of things. So the only thing that you really need to do is you just need to lift the boat up off of the trailer just slightly. And so we'll show you how we do that a little bit later in this, but this is the top 10 steps to get it done. So after you lift it up, it's to mark and measure the center of gravity. Like I said, we're going to provide that to you. You find the center of gravity by finding the center line of the pontoon boat. That's one of the measurements. So you simply do it by putting this carpenter square up on the top of the deck and on the side there. Once you do, that's this line here. That's the center line of the pontoon boat. Once you do that, you're going to measure down 7 inches, and you're going to mark another line, and that's where the plate is going to go. So it's really, we've simplified this significantly, taken out all the guesswork on this. And once you do that, you're going to mark the location of the plate. You'll go ahead and do some surface prep and, put your straps all up there. Basically get the glue on the plate and stick it on there. Once you glue the plates on there, you've got to wait about an hour before you continue the job. And what we typically do is, while we're waiting for the glue to set up, we'll go ahead and set up, look at the lift charts, another video on that one, and set the angle of attack for the foils. And then we can move on to these final steps. We take off the ratchet straps, and we actually hang the foils and mount the struts up to the deck. The installation in total, it takes about, I would say, about 7 hours or so. It does take 2 people. It's not a complicated installation, but it takes that amount of time, mainly because this is something that you've never done before. So we'll go into a little bit more depth on each one of these steps. I'm not going to spend a ton of time, but basically, if you've got a floor jack and a 4x4, you can put that post up against the deck and just lift up the boat enough to where you can just wedge some 2x4s in there. So it doesn't take too much. So the guideposts are completely fine to have on your trailer, as long as they're on the front half of the trailer in front of the hydrofoils, wherever you take those measurements. They can be on there. That is not an issue. They just have to be on the front half of the trailer. Okay, so the center of gravity, like I said, we provide the center of gravity, so you can just see here, depending upon what your boat length is, the horsepower range, we give you a range for the actual center of gravity. So you'll just mark this location, and that's where it will be. The one thing that I will mention about center of gravity, and it's helpful to know this, it is important, but don't get too wrapped around this. With the center of gravity, the way that the system is engineered is you've got the ability to actually change the location of the hydrofoils on the mounting plate after it's already been glued to the boat. In other words, you can still move the foils forwards or backwards to accommodate any sort of customizations or fine-tuning that you'd like to do with the system, even after the plate has been glued on there. But what I would like to just encourage you to do is just think about your boat. Think about the recommendations, the numbers that we provide to you, but also think about your furniture configuration, where your fuel tank is, your seats, if it's a fishing edition. It's probably a little bit lighter in the front if there's just a couple of captain's chairs up there, compared to if, it's a full length bench seating and those kinds of things. The other thing is, if you do have full length bench seating and you've got a really, really long boat, like let's say it's a 24, 25, 27 foot boat or more, you're probably going to want to cheat board a little bit more because that can throw off the CG just a little bit. But basically what you're going to do is here we're just marking the center of gravity. Once we mark the center of gravity, we're going to draw a line that is just straight up and down on the log itself. So that's what that looks like there. Once we know where the hydrofoils are going to mount, we actually at that point cut a section out of the trailer. It's just about a 3-foot section or so out of the trailer on just this inside running board, or bunk I should say, where the boat actually just sits on the trailer. And the reason for that is so that the hydrofoils can be mounted a little bit deeper on the boat, and that it just helps with trailering. So when you load it on, when you load it off, you're not going to have any issues there. Here's us doing the job. Here's what the end result looks like. It's basically you've just taken a section out and basically wrapped the carpet around it. So not a big deal. To find the center line of the boat, you just get a carpenter square and mark the center of where this side of that triangle or square meets the boat, and then mark that in a couple of places, make a line, and that should be the center line of the boat. Okay, so we have our center of gravity line here and our center line going there. After we do those two things, we're going to mark another line that is 7 inches down from the center of gravity, and that is going to be the line that defines or marks the top of our plate. So it's find the center of gravity, find the center line, measure 7 downs, and that's where the plate goes. Now, there is a mention here about lifting strakes. If your boat has lifting strakes, obviously that will be a problem, because this plate that glues onto the boat mounts in the same location as a lifting strake, so definitely double check that as well. We've got other videos out there for how to remove lifting strakes, but also if you have any questions, you can give us a call on that. But basically, once you know where the plate is going to go, you're going to go ahead and do the surface prep. We recommend either 40 grit or 60 grit, like flapping sand wheel that we put on a grinder, and just use that, and then use acetone or alcohol to actually clean it off from there. Okay, so that's what that looks like. The next step after you've completed this, you've got all your marks drawn, you know exactly where your plate is going to go. That is to prepare the ratchet strap. So you're going to want to get 3 ratchet straps around the boat for each one of the 2 large curved plates. So you can see here we've completed on this side. We've got 3. You basically put one in the front, one in the middle, one in the center kind of thing. And that's really just to apply a lot of pressure. On the back hydrofoils on that plate, you just need 1 strap on each side for the rear foils. One thing that we have learned, it depends on the boat. Every make and model is a little bit different, but you can see in this one, we were able to just basically reach the straps around the boat completely, which makes it really quick and simple. But some of the boats don't have that ability. And so what we're showing here is workaround that we found. And if you can't wrap the ratchet straps completely around the boat, you can buy these at Home Depot or Lowe's or online or whatever else, but this is a self-tapping bit that basically it's super simple. You drill a hole and it's actually going to thread or tap the metal. We do it in an inconspicuous location, typically like under the rub rail or something like that, and just put one of these eye hooks in there, and it's a really quick and easy way to attach your ratchet straps to the place where you need them to go. Okay, so once we've got that, we can go ahead and get the glue ready. The key thing about the glue, it depends on your location, what the weather's like, all those kinds of things. But in a nutshell, just know that you've got about 15 minutes or so. That's the working time of the glue. After that, you don't want to be moving the plates around or anything like that. And so it's going to cure a little bit faster too in warmer weathers and a little bit slower in cooler weathers. But one thing that you definitely want to do is we send out the mixing tips. Make sure that you squeeze out probably 4 to 5 inches out of the mixing tip when you first start it, to just really make sure that it's mixed properly. Get good coverage on the plate across the middle and on the outer edges too, just to make sure there's no water penetration coming into the edges of the plate itself. And once you do that, just glue them on one plate at a time. We typically start in the front, but it really doesn't matter which ones you work with. After the plates are glued on there, you need to let it cure for about an hour before you do anything more to that. So this is just showing basically how to find the center line for the rear plates to know exactly where those go. It's the exact same process. You hold it up to the deck of the boat, mark the center line of it, and then the same kind of math holds true. Once you have the center line, you're going to measure down 7 inches from the center line, and that's where the top of these small rear foil plates go. And the other thing is put the back of the plate right up against this weld line here. We want them as far back on the boat as possible, and typically that's a good safe spot to put it, just on the inside of the weld line. While the glue is drying, the next thing we typically do is we determine the angle of attack. And we've got an entire other video that shows how to determine and set the angle of attack, but we will run through this real quickly. So this chart is actually a little bit different than the one in the other video we showed. But in a nutshell, what this shows is you need to know, okay, what's the speed of my boat and what is the weight of my boat? And so what I do is I just cross-reference those two variables. We say if my boat's 2,500 pounds, it goes 25 miles an hour, I'm going to install the system at 0 degree angle of attack. Now, clearly there's a big gap here from 3 to 0, and then it jumps up to a -2. So we've got another video I would highly encourage you watching, and some additional information on this lift chart that will help guide you better on the angles. But this is a quick start to get you there. Okay. Once you know which angle you are going to set it at, then basically from there, you will attach the torpedo to the torpedo plate. And you'll notice when you're actually holding these two plates that there's a small dimple on or dot that is on the torpedo, and then these little dimples that are on the torpedo plate. And those two match up. They lock together once you actually fasten these screws in here. And it helps them from like sliding out of angle of attack, right? Or the angle of attack to accidentally change, because they do have significant loads on them. So this just shows you the actual different angles of attack look like. And by the way, so it's when we say a -2 degree angle of attack, it actually is lower in the front. It is a negative angle in the front compared to what the back is. But don't worry, it is still generating positive lift even at a negative angle of attack, because of the shape of the foil and also because of the natural riding position of the boat. Most pontoon boats ride about 2 degrees lower in the back than what they do in the front. And so even if you were to install it at a -2 degree angle, you're really installing it at a 0 degree with the way that the foils are going to hit the water. So just kind of food for thought there. Again, these are just pictures of what these different angles look like. You can see here at the bow, here's where it's a positive angle of attack. Once you have set those all up, the other thing that you're going to want to know is where to install the plate, what we call torpedo plate, onto the large curb plate that is actually glued to the boat. It's difficult to see in this diagram, but when you receive the plates, you will notice that there are hole numbers or marks on this curb plate. So it starts as 0, so it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, and the same is true back here. It's just hard to see them. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're always going to start out at hole position number 1. And that will give you the ability to move this plate backwards 1 hole, which is 2.5 inches, or forwards 2 holes, which is a total of 5 inches. So always start with hole position number 1. Once we get all this prepared, we're going to go ahead and screw, using Loctite, the main foils to the boat. The way that all of this attaches is the torpedo plate the torpedo attaches to this little torpedo plate, And then there's a pin that holds the main foil to those parts. And so that's why you can see this just hanging down here before we actually attach the strut, which goes in on this side. The next step is simply to assemble the taco bracket, which is going to mount to the top of the boat. We are going to attach the bottom of that taco bracket right here to the front top of the foil. Now, one thing, and I'm going to create a separate video for this, if your boat if it's got the aluminum sheeting on the bottom, then you're probably going to want to use one of these rivet nuts. Basically, this gives you the ability to attach hardware and be able to put a nut on the back of a bolt that you're trying to screw in without having any space up there to hold a tool or to hold the nut tight while you tighten that bolt down. So these rivet nuts, they're great tools for that. McMaster-Carr is the website where we purchase these from, and you can just get all the specs here on the rivet nut tool and the rivet nuts themselves. That's a great way to do it. And this next step is we've got to attach these 2-inch by 2-inch square beams to the boat. And so the way that you do that is with the hydrofoil already mounted to this plate. You want to make sure it's mounted to this plate. You attach the strut to the foil itself, and then you're going to mark the location of where that 2x2 square tube goes to the top of the deck of the boat. Okay. And so the other part of that is, I'm just noticing it's not in the diagram here. You're going to want to get a small level to hold it up to the strut here, just to make sure that the strut is actually level, and then mark the location of this brace here across the top. Once this is all complete, you've got the main plate that was glued to the boat, the torpedo plate, and a torpedo itself, which attaches to the foil, going up to the strut, which attaches to this 2-inch square tube at the top. Okay. For the rear foil, so we've already got those glued to the boat itself, the plate itself, and so simply all that is just attaching the main foils. Now, one thing to mention about attaching the rear foils is, even though you can change the angle of attack, we've played with it a whole bunch, and we just don't believe that it really affects the boat in a positive or negative way. So we just set them up every time, every installation, at a 0-degree angle of attack for those rear foils. And so it's just 4 screws, and that's it. Don't forget to put in the fairings that go in front of the torpedo itself, and then also there's a small fairing that goes right in front of this strut pin. And so just use any kind of glue, silicone, whatever else. You're not going to need to take these out in the future once they're in, and there's no maintenance or anything that you have to mess with there. That is the entire process for installing the system. Like I said, 6 to 7 hours, takes 2 people. You probably figured it out by looking at some of these pictures and me talking through it. It takes 2 people mainly because you've got to have extra hands to help you hold things, measure those kinds of things. And so it is not a complicated installation. So thank you so much for watching the video. If you do have additional questions, definitely give us a call. We are happy to help out. Thanks again.